Hello, everyone. Welcome to this webinar, Insights and Tools to Cope with the COVID-19 Disruption. My name is Neil Cortis, and I'm going to be moderating. I'd like to thank the organizer of this webinar, which is the Singapore Global Network, which is a division of the Economic Development Board. It's a network of Singaporeans living abroad, people who've previously worked or studied in Singapore, and those keen to move to Singapore. You can register with the SGN. We'll send out those links. And then you will get updates about events and also events like this. I'd like to welcome Dr. Cherie Chan.
Hi, everyone.
Dr. Chan is a clinical psychologist. She's president of the Singapore Psychological Society. She worked in the Singapore public health sector for 6 years, but is now in private practice. That's enough from me. Dr. Chan, how can we deal better? How can we better deal with this weird situation, this weird disruption to our lives?
Well, Neil, I think that's the question of the century right now, and it will probably be for the century. Well, thanks for coming and sharing this time with me. I know this topic has been very well talked about. I know that it's something that we have gone through quite a bit, but it would be nice, right, to also think about some insights that we could have into the COVID situation. And you know why? Why are we feeling all these things as well? So very quickly, as we go through, with this sudden lockdown or partial lockdown, as they call it in Singapore, you have all these things come up, right? For Singaporeans, xia sui, right? We know who said that before. Everybody's trying to buy their favorite items off the NTUC shelves. There was a bit of a lockdown period for entertainment and the bars and the entertainment industry. So a lot of people went out for the last outing before the closure occurred. And there's a lot of complaints going on around saying that we can't go out anymore. It's too tiring. It's too hard. Well, I hear you. I'm in the same boat with you. But of course, for those Singaporeans that are overseas or even coming back, they had to rush through this process. I guess you guys would have a different sort of set of ideas, right? It was hurry up, pack. Should we go back? Should we not? Let's quickly sell things off. I've had personal friends who have been overseas and, on various kind of maybe ministry work or even just studies, and they've had to just pack up everything as quickly as they went there. Quickly they had to come back. So it felt like it was quite an end of the world for a lot of us. And I guess this phase really is what we're all feeling. Just like, oh my God, get me out of this space. Yeah. So many questions that we might have. For those who stayed in the overseas countries that you are in, why did you stay, right? For those that chose to return to Singapore, why did you choose to return? Was it your choice? I know many people who were forced to return, whether it was by the government or whether it was by family members who are concerned. For those who have split decisions, especially families, boyfriend, girlfriend, or even husband and wives, right? Should we go back? One wants to go back, one doesn't want to go back, and was the decision really made for you? Or was it kind of made for others? And I think when you think about some of these questions, it leads us on into, what we would then feel, upset, happy, relieved, and anything, right? Everything could be present for us. Yeah, Neil.
Someone in the pre-event survey said, I'm questioning my whole life's purpose as a result of this. How does that come about? Is that a common reaction?
Yeah, it is. It is. I mean, a lot of us have our lives centered around the idea of doing stuff. So we're always doing work or we're going out, right? We're meeting people. So with this sudden closure, and it was really sudden, you had 1 day or 2 days to kind of react to it. It does feel like a large part of our lives are taken away. So it makes a lot of sense that, we'll be questioning, these deep kind of existential questions. It might not be for everyone, but for some of us, it definitely rings a bit of a bell for us.
And is it a good time? Is it a good time to ask those questions, or should you kind of park them?
No, ask it away. There's no point in parking them. You're going to create a big mountain of questions if you kept parking them. And I think that leads me on very nicely, actually, Neil, to the next slide that I wanted to talk about. So, if all the feelings that you have, right, if you feel, let's say, confused, I'm sure all of us will raise our hands here, right? What's happening? What's going on? There's so many numbers every day. What do we know? Or you might be feeling dead tired. I had to rush back home, right? I'm living in a different time zone now. I've got some friends who are working UK hours just because they come back to Singapore. Their company is still in UK, right? So they're still working UK hours. That's weird. I'm tired. I've had people who said, they're really irritated of course, right? You're living in a small household. Not all of us have a good space for ourselves, so you're crammed with 5 people, 6 people. I've known people who are staying in a household with 8 people. Too much. And what if you felt upset or maybe regretful? I know some people who feel really upset with their choice. They've decided to come back or they've decided to stay, and then now they're regretting it. And what if you felt all of the above? Well, good news, you're normal. That tells me you're human. That tells me that you're part of this situation as well. But whoa, hold on, right? What about the other way? Is everyone feeling like that? I don't think so. Some people actually feel surprised. Like, hey, right, this is something new, it's a new way of living. I'm excited, I want to try something different. That's possible. Some of us might feel content. I've got friends who are really happy just being in bed. Pajama days, as they call it, right? Just kind of lying down, I can do my work and do an online course, but I don't have to be out. Saves a lot of travel time. Some people are really happy. Especially if you're, I would say, more on the introverted side, you're happy not having to meet people. Socially, it's difficult. You're like, woohoo, time to stay at home. And some people actually feel really relaxed or loving. And I want to highlight this because in some families, although some are really, I would say, toxic in some ways, there are many families who are enjoying the kind of time together, especially those with young kids. There's always this guilt, right, behind not spending enough time with your kids in the growing years. And this seems to be a time when a lot of people are actually able to spend time that they've always wanted with this age group. So that's not too bad. And you're asking me now, right, what about all of the above? Well, good news again. All these feelings that everyone is having, well, good or bad news, they are really valid. Okay, so every feeling that you're having is valid. And we pause here, right? Because a lot of you will be like, no, I don't want that. No way. Well, I'm sorry. One of the things I would have to tell you is that they're really here to stay. So I wish I could say, get rid of these feelings, move away from it, but don't think so.
I've got questions coming in, Dr. Chan.
Yeah.
What are some strategies? Well, I don't know. Is it possible or not? What are some strategies for us to maintain a sense of normalcy during this period? Can you make it normal?
So it will become our new normal, which is interesting because my next slide is about the new normal. Maybe I could go through that and that could possibly answer the question. Is that okay?
Okay, but I've got one more I wanted to ask. In fact, uncertainty. We had a ton of uncertainty. It's not a feeling, is it? It's a fact. It's a suddenly we don't know what's going to happen, and many people find that very difficult. Do you have thoughts about that?
No, yeah. I mean, for me, I think uncertainty is going to be our new norm. And to be very honest with all of us, we are feeling really uncertain now because it's still very new and a very novel situation that we're in. The problem with it as well is that it's ever changing, right? So one day, numbers are high, the next day numbers are low. One day people say it's airborne, another day they say it's not. One day you have to wear a mask, the other day you don't have to. So this causes everyone to feel really unsure and uncertain. But as the COVID, I suppose, season goes on, things will become clearer. The information becomes more acceptable or palatable. This uncertainty actually decreases along the way. So you might still feel, uncertain. You might still feel insecure or unsure. But the fact of the uncertainty actually dies down. So, in Singapore, they always give you numbers at the same time. They are always using the same platforms to give you the space. So in that sense, right, we get a bit of certainty, and that's sometimes enough to keep us grounded, if I call it that.
You mentioned introverts. Someone says in the chat, what are some ways for extreme extroverts to cope with the situation, apart from more Zoom meetings? People are really missing sociability, contact.
No, for sure, for sure. I mean, one of the ways that I've known people do is we're allowed to go for exercise, right? So you're meant to go for an exercise, maybe with one other person in the same household, or you're meant to go alone. What I've had some people do is they've run to their friends' houses, so their friends upstairs, and they're like, hey, how's going on, and then they continue running to the next place, especially if you're living in the same area. That's quite a nice thing to do. I know you're not meant to travel out for exercise, but if there's people in your area, even if it's neighbors that you've not kind of talked to before, maybe standing at a distance, just saying hi across the gate, it could be a nice way of just checking in with someone as well. There are a lot of people who are doing this exercise stuff now. Everyone's a new runner or a new cyclist. So sometimes having, in a sense, running with these people, but again, with safe distancing measures, could be a way to make you feel like you're connected. Because to be fair to all of us, even on Zoom meetings, right, you don't actually feel connected. So even if I'm talking to you and you're hearing me, it's not like we're in the same room and you feel each other's presence. So the extreme extroverts are definitely going to struggle a little bit, but it's not a lost cause here.
Okay. I've got tons more questions, but let's move on and I'll work them in.
Yeah, no worries. Okay. So what's our new normal, right? Like I was just telling you guys. So our new normal is, this is our new fashion these days. Everyone's on a mask. Could be a gray one, a blue one, a zebra colored one. It could be anything, right? Black. People have done some like cat ones. This is our new normal. It could be also a new normal to just stay at home, to stay safe, right? That's what the government is saying. That's what everyone's telling everyone else to do. In every country of a lockdown, you want people to stay at home. You don't want people to keep going out, even if it's just for groceries. This is a new normal for parents as well. You're trying to do work and your kid's running up, screaming away, asking you for this and that and this. You don't really have time or space to even pause, right, to do some of your work, or Zoom meetings, as we call it, or even this. Maybe your kid's in the background now, right? So this is going to be our new norm for a while. And I guess all these questions will come out, right? We blur our days, we blur our nights. We don't know the time of the day. I have so many clients come in and tell me, Cherie, actually, I don't know what day it is today. I just know the dates because I'm meant to see you, but I don't know what day it is. Family members become the only people that we see. It's good for some people. I understand it's bad for some because it could be very triggering for some of us. And it's really boring, right? There's a lot of boredom. There's just too much to handle in terms of space and time. So some of us might have this fear of missing out. When you look at videos, problem with Zoom videos and every other video is that people are always seeming to live up their lives. So I've had some questions pre-survey who's asking, right, my friends seem to be doing better than me. Everyone seems to be doing better than me. Well, their videos, their Instagram, they want you to believe that they're doing better than you, but you don't really know as well. So it seems like everyone's suddenly becoming more grateful. Everyone's have their own journals. Everyone's becoming a new artist, a new runner, a new cyclist, right? Everyone's trying their hand at painting. But what about me, right? Am I like that? Am I really exercising more? Am I trying more? When you look at some of these things, it's like, whew, bit of a FOMO experience. And for me, maybe the real life me is just that, right? I'm a couch potato. All I do is sit down. Whether it's work meetings, whether it's TV, I just sit in the same place. And I guess sometimes these feelings of guilt, shame, hopelessness comes out a lot more for us as well. So yeah, go for it.
I have a few questions. Families. Can we talk a little bit about families? Because you had a slide of a family suddenly together. Lots of people talked about that. And what do you do if your family relationships are not so good and you're suddenly together and it's not easy?
Yeah, I know that's a very good question. I think some of the clients that we've seen have also been suffering and struggling with that. So usually what I would suggest for everyone who's struggling with family is to, as best as you can, you want to be able to try and keep a physical distance. So whether it's being able to stay behind a door, literally, right? Being able to stay in your room for a while, being able to give yourself some time to shut off. Maybe it's a boundary that you want to set with some of these family members. Of course, when I say this, I know that, if you're having this problem, it is very likely that your family doesn't respect boundaries so easily as well. So you want to be able to create a physical one. So even if it's giving yourself an hour a day to step out of the home, even if it's giving yourself an hour, 2 hours a day, or as many hours as you can to stay behind your door, if you have a room to yourself, that would be helpful and that would be enough. Being able to play some music as you're around, with headphones on, sometimes gives the impression that you don't want to talk to these people. And at times that could be a deterrent, even if it's a face value one also. Yeah, I would say that that's unfortunately what we can do, when times are difficult. I mean, reaching out to friends, right, would also be a helpful way. If you need to rant, ranting it to someone to make you feel like you're not alone, that's probably what you want to target, the loneliness of it.
I've got the opposite question here. Someone says, can you talk about people living all alone? Because that's a quite different situation. That is very unusual to be on your own for weeks at a time.
Oh,
How do you deal with that?
Good question. I do think that being able to stay alone has its own perks and benefits. So you want to be able to create a place for yourself that is very comfortable. So being alone, you don't have to worry about other people having their own quirks, or having to give in to design or whatever that might be. So setting up a place that's really comfortable for you, whether you like plants or whether you like color, right? And putting it in the same space would be helpful. I like to recommend sometimes having a kind of like a restful corner, if I call it. So it could be a place with your favorite pillows or cushions, your favorite books, for example. And every time you go to that corner, it's really for relaxation. It's really for just enjoyment. Maybe your favorite music with your favorite drink, wine maybe. That would be my choice, I think, if it was me. And also if let's say if you have to stay alone, but that's not by choice, yeah, you want to be able to engage in social connections as much as you can. So don't just scroll, right? Don't just scroll through people's lives. Literally have a conversation, a call with them. Literally speak to them over the phone. Sometimes we've lost touch of that, right? And you want to play games. There's a lot of apps these days, right? House Party is one of them, where you're in the app together playing really funny, stupid games with your friends. Having an online drinking session, which is something that some of us have actually planned to do ourselves. And yeah, so it's kind of, I suppose, having a new way of connecting, even if it's not face to face at the moment.
Great. Tons of questions, but we should move on.
Alrighty. And I mean, I suppose, right, how do we manage some of these messy feelings? So some of us are thinking, let's not think about it. I wish that too. I would also wish not to think about my feelings. But the more we do that, unfortunately, the more it piles up, just like a big mountain. So what I would suggest, right, is acknowledge. So it's like an ACE, ACE, right? Acknowledge, come back to your body, and just engage. What do I mean? Very quickly, right? Acknowledging just means, what exactly are my thoughts and feelings right now? What am I expressing and managing, really? And where do you feel it in your body? Can you connect with it better? Don't just ignore it, because it's just gonna manifest into something else, to be honest. So you want to notice it, feel it in your system, and engage, right? What do you want to engage with? Use your 5 senses. What's around you? What's going on? If you're staying in your house all day, can you just look out the window? Can you see what's happening outside? Blue sky, rainy, people walking downstairs, you walking outside. Is there ways that you can really stay present? Because when you're caught up alone, sometimes, or a lot of times, your mind tends to wander, and you start feeling whether things are real or not. So it can feel like you're in an alternate reality sometimes, especially with the lack of social connection. So really staying present is one of the key ways, to me, that I would encourage all of us here to try. But of course, in this process, it's going to be, I always say that Singaporeans tend to have a very, we tend to have a very, I would say, a very national kind of core belief about ourselves. It's always not good enough, or we're always not trying hard enough, or it's always something along the lines of criticism. The toxic parents or toxic family members, would probably ring very much in your head right now. So one of the things that I feel would be important to acknowledge is kindness. The opposite, the exact opposite of being critical, is to really show some form of kindness, some form of compassion, to yourself right now. Pandemics, right, we tend to be more in touch with this critical feeling. We tend to be more in touch with feeling helpless and vulnerable. And what really happens after that is that you end up self-blaming a lot. That happens quite a bit. And it's very common for all of us to do that, because no one likes to be vulnerable. And we just want to blame ourselves a lot for that. So what is it that we can do, right? Is show some kindness, Literally thank your brain for coming up with some stuff, telling yourself that this is a new day, or this is something that you've done for yourself today, something meaningful that you did, could be a helpful way of showing kindness too.
Could I ask, I want to come to, you had anger on the slide there, and we had people said in the pre-event survey, they said people having problems with anger, and particularly, again, this idea of being stuck with family, or it could be stuck with anyone, but they're worried they're not managing anger well in this new situation. And can you say more about that?
Yeah, so anger is going to be, so usually, right, anger is like a first level feeling, if I call it that. You're usually not really just feeling anger. There's just something beyond or below the anger that you're experiencing. So and sometimes it could be worry, it could be frustration, it could be sadness, but it just comes out as anger, because that's the easiest way to express some of the emotions or negativity that you might be experiencing at the moment. So what I would say is, if you have the option and opportunity of reflection, maybe ask yourself deeper, right? What is it that you're angry about? What really is going on here? Am I angry, or is there something else underneath that? And when you get to know that feeling, the anger subsides quite naturally, to be honest. But if let's say, there's nothing underneath it, there's someone that's really irritating you, there's someone that's really angering you, I would say in this period, you've got to really create that physical distance. So if that person can respect your boundary, you need to tell them, I need a timeout right now, we need to stop this, assuming the person can respect the boundary. If the person can't, then you kind of have to create the boundary. So it's like behind door, lock the door just an hour. If they're banging outside, just stay, right? Just stay in that space that's safe for you until everyone comes down, and then you come out again. It's probably the best way around that, though.
We had the opposite question earlier in the chat, and someone said their teenage child was hitting them. I don't know, I hope not too seriously, but or being too physical. How do you deal if someone's, I don't know if they're angry, well, anyway, how would you deal with someone who's being angry towards you and possibly physically angry? I hope not.
Yeah, so no, you're right. So I think along those lines, right, it will be important to also talk about families who might be experiencing some form of domestic violence in any way. So a lot of the families now are stuck in a situation where you're living with a perpetrator, or you're living with an abuser, and it can be a very scary and difficult time for them. So although we can't get you out of the home, one of the things that Singapore has been doing is they've started a national care hotline where we're accepting all these calls for help. So we're listening into calls that might need domestic violence kind of, I would say, help or support. It could be someone talking on the phone with you. It could be someone, I suppose, you want to be able to keep yourself as safe as you can. If they get into a mood, you need your own safe space. So I would still say create a bit of a distance. You might need to step out of your home for a while before you come back in again. Yeah, that's probably what I would say. But there are some hotlines that you can call within Singapore systems itself if you do face some form of domestic violence. The Ministry of Social and Family Development has a lot of hotlines under its care, and those will be the ones to call straight away. It might also involve the police though. So if let's say you're in a domestic violence situation and you can't get out of it, safety is a bit of a concern, you would then need to call the police in to help in that situation as well.
Okay. We can talk more about this at the end if people want. Someone had a question about contempt. Managing
okay.
Contempt. Other people being disrespectful, contemptuous, and which is very unpleasant.
It is. That boils down a little bit to communication though. So it might be, being really assertive with the people in the home. It could be validating them, and then stating your need. So sometimes with people who tend to be very disrespectful, it might be cutting, conversations to really short instructions, so you don't have anything to kind of converse about. It could also be just being really assertive about it. So it could be, I hear you, but I think this, and I hear you, but I think this, and you become like a broken down recorder, because sometimes these people need to hear a standard set of stuff before they get it into their head as well. I mean, at this time, I wouldn't ask people not to talk to each other, given that we're already not talking enough. But if that gives you more safety, that could be a way around it as well. So you only talk about things that are, I suppose, things that you can. If they're things that you and your partner or you and that person seem to disagree on, maybe that's to be parked. You don't have to always talk about everything right now, where possible. Again.
One more question on these kind of negative issues, because we were talking about kindness, but several people have said, how do we deal with the frustration of inconsiderate strangers, flatmates, neighbors, people not following the rules, etc.? It's very annoying. How can we get them to behave better?
Okay, so I think in a more punitive way, I know that we have an app, right, that allows you to report individuals who are not so safe distancing. That's really punitive. That's one way. I guess in other ways, if you're staying with people who are a little bit disrespectful or just unable to, I guess, support your boundaries, it might be putting up prompts or rules. It could be sitting down with a collaboration with them, and this is an agreement, right? This is something that we need to be able to stay in this house together. We can't do this because of certain things. Sometimes it's about education as well. So we assume that everybody receives the same information in the same way, but I can receive information differently from you, even though it's presented in the exact same way. So it could be just having a conversation about that, understanding why this needs to be done, understanding the links. So you literally have to link A to B to C, right? If you do this, this is the behavior. If this is the behavior, what's the consequence? And that will be sometimes helpful when you chain it up this way for people to understand.
Okay, I've got one final question, then we can go and we can keep talking about kindness. This is so relevant. Someone says, my dad is hooked on consuming news, and it's kind of intrusive for the rest of us. We maybe don't want 24-hour news and updates. It's not what we want. How can we steer his attention away from the news without risking a huge argument?
Okay, so there's a couple of ways around this. I mean, if you can be boundaried with him, he needs to be able to hear why you don't want to hear the news. So a lot of us, when we converse, we just say, I don't want to do it. I don't want to hear it. You know, and we just leave it as that. Or we might just say, yeah, because I don't feel like it. But that's not true, right? There's something beyond that. And maybe this person needs to understand what's beyond that before they're able to, I guess, accede. That's one way. That's a nice way, I suppose. Another way would be, you know, it could also be whenever he speaks about the news, you just give him like a you ignore. You know, you ignore. It's almost like no response. You may just go but everything's flat. But when he talks about something else, you really go in for it. Oh, Dad, tell me more. You know, tell me more about that. I want to know more about that. And that's another way around that. So the assumption here is that if Dad wants to connect with you, because he maybe wants the attention, or he feels like that's the only way to get your attention, then you switch it up. Don't give him attention when he talks about the news. Give him a lot more attention when he's talking about something else. That could be one way.
Like a dog, he's training. Sorry, shouldn't say. We were talking about kindness. Let's carry on. But thank you so much for these really interesting questions, by the way.
Yeah, they are. That's good questions, though. I'm enjoying it. Yeah, so I guess it's in the whole process of what I'm saying, you also want to be kind to yourself, because sometimes you're not going to do the kindest of things and we might feel really guilty. Like, so even in my suggestion, right, with, you know, training the attention of one of your family members, it might feel like you're doing something wrong. But, you know, is that something that you could appreciate that you're doing for yourself? Because we are very good, right, in Singapore to do things for everyone else. We're very collective as a society. But we sometimes don't do things for ourselves that much, sometimes. So, you know, maybe for us in this piece of crazy times, these are the 4 things I'm thinking about that could be something that we could think about. You know, in this situation, which sucks, you know, whether you're in US, UK, Singapore, wherever, right, in this situation that sucks, what are some small moments that we could still appreciate in the day, right? Was there something that we still did that we could appreciate for ourselves? You know, as couples, you know, you might have quarreled the whole day, but is there something that you did in the day that you could appreciate as a shared experience or a shared moment? Did you guys cook together? You know, did someone make coffee for each other? You know, as a family, even though you hate each other sometimes, you know, were there still moments where you could enjoy the peace? So it could be, you know, someone's watching TV, someone's on the phone, someone's just sitting at the dining table. But was there just that couple of moments of peace that you could just enjoy before, you know, the chaos happened again? And if you're single, right, if you're staying on your own, could you try something new? Could you try something different? So I've asked a lot of people to also think about, you know, hey, right, in this situation, if there's something new that I wanted to try, if there's something meaningful that I've always wanted to try, but we always didn't have the time. Well, we have a lot of time now. And that's probably something that, you know, we could try now. And the good news is that no one's going to see it anyway. So that could be one thing. So maybe to kind of round that part up, right? I guess the question really is, how can we do all of these? How can we do all of these, even as we experience the sadness, the frustration, the guilt, the anger, that we are also going to experience in other times of our day? And I think that's really important, because it's not about just because I appreciate my small moments, I will never feel angry, or I'll never feel upset, or I'm never going to feel frustrated. You are. And they're going to be here to stay. And that's okay. Keeps us human, you know. So maybe just along those lines, and I'll finish this side before I'll take some more questions. Yeah, some cool things to try. So letter writing, right? We've long forgotten that. But good news for me is that, you know, whenever I go on trips, I still write postcards to some of my friends. So some of my friends still receive postcards from me whenever I'm on a trip. Given that I'm not on a trip now, I could still do the same thing. I could still send postcards to each other. one of the interesting ways to connect is where the person receives the letter or receives the postcard. You can have a call with each other. It's almost like you're connecting in a different way. One of the other things they did was music, right? So you've seen so many Zoom videos, a whole choir has sung together, or a whole orchestra has played together. I think that's fun. That's something interesting to be able to do. Send flowers. I just did that the other day as well, right? Just send flowers to someone. It's always nice to receive a surprise during this time, because it's nice to know that people still care and people still remember you, even when we're alone.
We had lots of questions about environment. Have you got any tips? Because some people just were so frustrated that they were trying to work, for instance, or study, and they just couldn't find a good place to study. You can't magic space out of nowhere. What do you do if you're finding it really just practically difficult to do the things you want to do?
Yeah, I think in this case it would be two different things though. So one part of it, we want to be able to notice, right, some of the emotions that come up for ourselves. So a lot of the frustration and anger that we may experience, you want to be able to notice that and kind of diffuse from it. When I say diffuse, I mean kind of take a step away from some of those emotions, because a lot of times it's not the emotions that are the problem. It's because it's the relationship that you have with these emotions. So you kind of don't want these emotions to be there, or you don't want to feel this way. That's why you get even more frustrated and even more angry with yourself for not being able to get the work done. So I would say emotionally first, you want to, like what we talked about earlier, you want to ace it, you want to acknowledge it, make some room for it, know that you're going to feel it, it's okay. It is a moment of frustration. That's one part of it, so that you don't feel so intensely. And then practically, right, you want to be able to, I suppose, create a good space for yourself. So where you can, right, always go to the same place. It could be the same table. It could be the same corner. You could always use the same. I've asked people to use the same pen before. Use the same watch before to make it really more consistent and comfortable for them. I've asked people to kind of wear the same hoodie before. So let's say they're in a space that they feel really worried, to use the same kind of hoodie to keep them close, keep them comfortable. It could be a little bit of a blanket to wrap themselves up with. That's one of the ways that I would sometimes make it more practical for you, to, I suppose, find a place that could be yours. Of course, right, if let's say you have your room, if you do, it'll be nice to bring the nature from outside in. So sometimes it's about having a view. If you don't have a view, create the view. So putting a plant there, it's about putting something that you like in front of you, so that every time you feel that frustration or, there's no space, you can look at some of these things and feel a bit calmer before refocusing back on what's important again.
Okay, I've got some questions about routine. In the pre-event survey, someone said, I feel like I'm supposed to have a routine, but I just cannot create one, cannot give the day structure. Do you have any tips?
Well, I think the question would also be, are you a routine person? Because if you're not, then that wouldn't work for you. But I would say have a boundary. So if you can't do routines, it's okay. There's no problem in that. But I would say have a time boundary for yourself. So maybe it could be, 2 hours of doing this right now, or it could be three hours of doing something else right now. So it doesn't always have to be work first then play. It could be play and then work and then play and then work and more play, So it could be anything. So sometimes routines make it feel very rigid. It's like you have to do work in the day and then play at night, for example. But if that's not you, you can just do it the other way, right? And go by hour. If having 8 hours is too long, cut it short. Just do something in the next hour. Do something in the next half an hour.
Okay, and I've got the opposite question. The opposite question in the chat. Some people say, how do you avoid the boredom? They want to shake up their routine because of the boredom of doing the same things every day, bedroom, coffee, whatever, work, same round and round. And that's just driving some people crazy.
I know it does. I think whatever you're doing or whatever these people are doing are correct. So you want to, I suppose, play around with the day. So if today you start off with work, maybe tomorrow you can start off with a TV show. You want to put in different things in a day, sometimes to break up some of that work boredom, or even that the game that you're playing, because you can't be playing the game the whole day as well, or you can't be watching Netflix the whole day. So what I like people, or what I like to suggest sometimes, is having a personal project that you can keep coming back to. I've had some people kill time by puzzles. Puzzles is a big one right now. Everyone has a puzzle. The more pieces, the better. The longer it takes, But it's always just something that you want to do bit by bit to a personal project. So for some people, it's a puzzle. For some people, it could be a painting. For some people, it could be just reading through their favorite book. But just having, I would say, a goal to get to day on day, that could be helpful in kicking the boredom a little bit. I would say take a chance to also step out, where you can, right? Mask on, but take a chance to step out. Maybe just walking around your house and then going back home. It could be something as simple as that. Because to be fair, it is really, really hard to stay in your house, four walls all the time. And I wouldn't want to recommend that as well, as much as I can. Yeah.
So we've got some questions about work, but I think we're going to cover that in the presentation. So maybe we should go to that, and then I'll ask those work questions.
Yeah. So actually, the next slide is about work. So I think for some of us here, before that, I wanted us to think about it this way, right? Let's call bullshit. It's so hard. Everyone seems to have their own rules and instructions. And even me, right? I'm giving you some rules or some sort of advice now, but it could be all bullshit, seriously. And that's okay, right? If you don't think the advice is great, it's fine, because you're doing the best you can. I can only do so much in terms of what we say, but really you're doing the best that you can. And you don't have to follow another set of rules, another set of guidelines. There's really no A-style way of getting through this pandemic. And throughout this whole process, I would encourage everyone to just hold yourselves kindly. If you're only able to work 2 hours a day compared to 8 hours before, just hold yourself kindly. That's okay. If you're not able to kind of have a good relationship with mom because mom is just too difficult, again, hold yourself kindly, right? That's also okay.
Quick, before we move to work, someone just asked this question. I'm very curious what you're going to say. How would you deal with social media consumption? Is that a positive way to connect with people, or maybe you're using it too much? Do you have thoughts about how healthy that is? What a balance is?
Yeah, I guess it depends on what you're using social media for. So if, let's say, you're kind of using social media for the news, and that's your one way of news. Because for me, I don't have newspaper subscriptions. So literally all my news comes from Facebook. So I use Facebook a lot for news rather than just for conversation with friends. So I suppose that's okay. Even if you're using social media a lot to converse with friends and just to connect, I think that's fine as well. I wouldn't say that is a really, I would say, a tip of the balance, unless all you're doing is social media, and because of that you're ending up having to have a lot of negative thoughts about yourself, or a lot of comparisons on yourself, or feeling like the whole world is having fun except you. Then that would be a problem.
I think, in fact, so I read the question exactly said this: social media comparison.
Okay.
Perhaps what you just said.
Yeah.
Feeling that other people are doing better somehow.
Yeah, so I think, again, right, if you feel like social media and you're seeing that everyone, the whole world is doing better, just remember what social media is as well. It never really says the real thing, right? It always talks about what I want to show you. So it's kind of like, I'm going to show you my best face. No one's really going to show you all the other moments they're having inside. So, for example, right, Instagram is going to capture that one square. But there's another 24 hours or 23 hours in the day that could have been really messy, and that one square was the best moment, and that's all they've taken. So it really is about that too. And even if you do feel like people are genuinely having fun and you're not, again, hold yourself kindly. It's okay. You don't have to have fun. I can tell you I'm not having fun. I have fun sometimes, but not all the time. Okay. So if you're working from home, I was just thinking that, I could cover very few or very quick tips on what it would be like to work from home. Be accountable. So, to keep ourselves on track, we need to tell people what we're going to do. If we don't tell people anything, we're not going to do it. So you want to be accountable, right? Tell someone, make someone, check in on you. Keep each other accountable. It could also be, protecting work hours. So a lot of times, right, because you work from home, suddenly your work hours stretch. It can go up to 7, 8, 10, right? An email comes in, no problems. I can read it. You want to hold yourself back. Don't go straight into jumping into having to reply your emails, if you can, again, and really be protected about it. I think one other thing is you want to reward yourself. So we also don't do this often enough. We kind of think that that's our role. That's what we need to do. But rewarding yourself through small milestones can be helpful to keep you on track at work as well. Yeah.
So many questions just on these things. How do you cope with a boss that wants to Zoom call with you every day and micromanage, suddenly try and micromanage your, oh, I'm so sorry, try and micromanage you?
How do you deal with it?
Yeah.
Tell them that your connection is StarHub and it's not working. I mean, you want to be, yeah.
But more generally, someone else has boundaries with colleagues. You know, we all, if they know where you are, but they know you're at home, you're sitting with your computer's right there, and people are under pressure perhaps to just let work cover everything.
Yeah, so I think having, like my second point on the slide, right? I think having a protected hour is really important. So if you can't respond in the next hour, or if you kind of really want that space and time to have the hour to yourself, I think you can. I mean, I think all of us need to actually. We need to do this more. Kind of saying that, hey, right, in the next 2 hours, I gotta be busy with something. I'm not gonna have my phone by my side. You know, give me that space, and I'll come back after that. So usually, what people are afraid of is that if you don't do it now, you will do it. You won't do it forever. But when you give yourself an opportunity, right, to be able to tell them that you'll come back after a certain amount of time, it's easier for people to accept that. So that could be a way when you communicate, you know, that you need the time or you need the space.
Someone says, how do I convince my boss to take a break?
Be really slow in your responses to him so that he has no choice but to wait for you and take a break in the meantime. It'll be hard. I mean, I don't think you can convince someone else to do something for you. But I do think that you can shape the way you want to respond to him. So, you know, it may be that you tell him, like what I said, have a boundary about it, or it could be that you purposefully take a little bit longer to respond so that you can then have a bit of breathing space as well. I think that's what you can do. So you can shape your own behavior, and hopefully in your shaping of behavior, you're shaping his behavior as well. But you can't really change what he chooses to do eventually, though. That's outside your circle of influence.
And some people, just one more question about work, maybe. Some people were worried. No, you carry on. I'll come back to this. I'll come back to my question.
Yeah, okay. I wanted to also highlight one more thing though. So I think some of you have raised questions about communication and just kind of how we're gonna engage. Because you know, a lot of times we talk about clear communication, but what does that really mean sometimes? So especially when it comes to couples, you know, are you listening to me? What are you really saying? Or even with your bosses and all that, right? This is not what I mean. Can you stop? And we get to a lot of fights or disagreements. So one of the things that I like to do in these 3 steps really is about being validating. So validating doesn't mean agreeing. Validating really just means you're hearing the person. So sometimes it's about saying, you know, I hear you, I know what you're saying, you know, and that person just kind of pauses for a moment as well. And you also want to be open, right, with what you're hearing. So don't be so quick to jump in and cut them off or say no, and I want to say my point. We have a lot of time for that right now to be able to do that, especially if you're staying in the same place, right? So pause, you know, validate, hear each other out, and then state what you need. So the last part, we're not very good at. We're not very clear with what we need sometimes. Sometimes we don't even know what we need. Maybe ironing, what is it that you need right now? What is it that you need from your partner right now? What is it that you need from your friends right now? And being able to state that so that people can kind of meet those needs for you. That could help with communication, I think. So when is it, you know, so people ask, right, when is it too much? You know, do I have to wait till it's too much before I see someone or seek some help? So my answer to that really is it never needs to be too much. You don't need to wait till a point, right, where you're kind of dying or you're feeling like you can't handle things anymore before you kind of ask for help. You don't have to wait till you're ostracized or, you know, you're to the point of no return. That's a bit too late, right? So you want to give yourself a chance to be able to notice some of these factors as well. So a lot of the clients recently have also brought up a lot of worries, more worrying, maybe more panic attacks, more sleep problems. There's a lot of restlessness, right? There's a lot of feelings of helplessness and loss generally. So when you do feel some of these things, you want to be able to just kind of ask for help. And you might be asking me, you know, how, where, what do I do? The good news is that for Singapore, or at least people in Singapore, the Singapore Psychological Society has pro bono and reduced rate services up on our website. You know, we have a lot of clinicians who have stepped up to volunteer their time. and you can make use of the clinicians on the list to be able to get your help that you need. So some people that have called us have used like telephone calls, so just phone calls, check-in. Some people have preferred email responses. Some people have preferred face-to-face in terms of online kind of therapy as well. And that's all available with the therapist on board. If therapy is not ready for you, you don't really think you want it, it's weird, there's also a resource page for tips, on managing anxiety, whatever I'm talking about right now, but all the work from home. So what I raised was just 3 points, but there's a whole article resource that we've written about that too. So you can go onto the SPS website to find some of these resources. Singapore, like I said, there's a national care hotline that's been raised. You could use that. It's a 24/7 hotline. Webinars, right? Like this. Hey. And the next one that's coming up, right? Free webinars are also from the American Psychological Association. There's free stuff out there that the psychology associations are giving out. So if you're overseas right now, check in with your psych associations. Some schools are also offering free courses, like Harvard, I know is offering free courses for people. Just interesting stuff, that you could try, I suppose. Personally, I've also liked the use of an app. So there's one app that I'm currently on right now, 29K. No, I'm not getting any money for promoting it, unfortunately. But it's in line, right? It's in line with what I'm talking about. So there's courses on managing anxiety, stress. There's also courses on the app that allows you to do some meditation, relaxation kind of strategies. I quite like it. So yeah, just showing it up to you guys as well.
Great. Dr. Chan, I think actually I'm going to let you finish the presentation, and then we're going to save questions till the end, because I just want to defend maybe 8 minutes at the end. But why don't you finish up, and then we'll do all questions together.
Okay, so I think I wanted to actually, there's a couple of things I wanted to end off on. So one of the major things I wanted to talk about is what if I stay with someone with mental health issues? So we've talked a lot about what if you have mental health issues in this period of time. But what if you're already living with someone that might have mental health issues? So we've got people who've talked about, my mom has autism, my mom has dementia maybe, or my child has autism maybe, right? Or my partner has depression maybe. So what can we do? Take care of yourself first. Now, this sounds very selfish, but no, right? If you're not there, if your mind goes out of whack as well, you're not going to be there to take care of these people who really need you, especially during this very difficult time. So you want to be able to take care of yourself first with some of the tips that we've raised earlier and all the resources that you have out there. There's just so much, I didn't want to give you more because there's just so much. And you can just use your own ways of coping that you're already doing as well. It doesn't have to be anything different, but take care of yourself first. Validate. So you want to be able to validate your partner, validate, yourself, knowing that this is tough, this is difficult, be kind to yourself in that way and learn the symptoms, right? So let's say with mom with dementia, she might be forgetful, or not she will be forgetful, or, she will be behaviorally difficult, understand these are the symptoms of the problem. It's not directed at you, it's not personal. Don't take it personally as much as you can. Talk it out, rant it out, again, right? This is where that assertiveness comes in, right? Tell your friends, hey, I really need this space right now. I'm living with someone that's difficult. Please help me out here. I really need to talk to some of you guys. It could also be helping people understand what you really need. So being able to express that better, maybe having a timetable with your family as well. So it's quite important to set boundaries, whether the kids, this is kids time, or this is mommy time, or this is daddy time. This is time that you guys have to go on your own, or this is time for school. That's one way around that too. Yeah, and this is what I talked about earlier, the physical distance. I do think that this is really important. So if you're living with someone with mental health issues, you need to give yourself a bit of physical distance and space, again, right, as much as you can. So if you're someone that can help manage the child in some way, if let's say that's what you need, allow that, maybe relinquish some of that control that you might have as well. Let's say your partner has depression, or someone is really in need, validating that person and also asking for some space. It could be 20 minutes just to time out for yourself. That would probably be what we can do right now in this very difficult time. Or one of the things that you could do is also seek therapy, right? So it could be seeking therapy for your partner, whether it's an online service, or even for yourself, where you have that time as your own me time. Yeah. Okay, so as I just finish off, maybe generally, I think I want to be able to leave you guys with 3 things. So if you forget everything that I've said today, that's fine. But remember 3 things, okay? Just 3 things. That's simple, right? Let's really work together on being able to connect. So connect in all the ways that we talked about, even through this webinar, right? Connect with your friends, check in with people you've not checked in a while. You know, everybody will be appreciative of just being remembered at this time. So connect. The next thing you want to do is contribute, right? So contribute effectively. So don't throw water out and put water back in, you know, into your boat, right? So contribute. How can you contribute? Many ways. You can volunteer for certain things. You know, if you're able to still, I suppose, create resources for people around you. That's one way to do it. If you can contribute in terms of your, like recently, right? We had a solidarity budget come out. We had $600 given to people. People started contributing that amount to people in need. That's also one way of contributing, even during this time, to help keep yourself meaningful and useful. If you know, contributing at work, if you're still working, yeah, that's one way to doing it. And of course, lastly, right, care. That's all care. You know, care for yourself, care for others, right? It's a difficult time. You know, don't expect it to be any different, right? It's tough, it's hard. I can't expect myself to feel on the top of my game the whole day as well. So care for yourself, care for others, give yourself breaks as you can. Yeah, and stay safe, everyone. You know, just stay safe.
Thank you so much, Dr. Chan. That has just been so insightful and useful. I have got a ton of questions. Now, if you had a burning question, please ask again. But here's this one just came in. Lots of people on the call are students, and I'll just read it out. I'm graduating early next year, and I can't help feeling this sense of dread and hopelessness because obviously prospects are not perhaps going to be anything like they were going to be for students. Have you got any, what can they do? Because that's a tricky situation.
Yeah, I suppose so. I don't know actually. I mean, to be honest, I think I know that there's certain sectors in the government that, with the recent budget as well, there's certain sectors that they've raised job opportunities. If it could be, you know, in healthcare, or it could be in some form of teaching, for example, where they've created quite a lot of jobs for this purpose. So that could be one way to look at it. Another way would be, you know, maybe giving yourself an opportunity to do interns instead of work straight away. Because if you're kind of looking for direct work, which I know all of us want to, and it's difficult, I think giving yourself options. Maybe it's an internship to start, or maybe it's a volunteering thing to start, you know, and then building your network up again. That could be one way of doing it. It could also be just, you know, maybe being a bit more entrepreneurial. It could be, you know, because of the situation, starting your own side business in some way. You know, it could be something that you buy and sell. It could be something that you're baking for to sell, or something like that. You know, I guess you want to be able to expand your options, even if it's a difficult time, and not be so traditional about the one way of doing things.
Okay, so we talked a lot about self-care. Someone said, I'm worried. Main concern is family members back in Singapore. I'm staying in the UK for work. I would appreciate some tips how to manage this anxiety. There are people you want to help, but you feel you can't help because you are just not there.
Yeah, I think giving them the resources would be helpful. So if there are family members who might make use of some of these resources, it could be quite helpful. So even if they're older individuals, let's say, who don't do therapy and all that stuff, hotlines are great. So all our hotlines right now, or most of our hotlines right now, are 24/7. If they're not, they're also on throughout the day, weekly, right? So having check-ins with your family service centers, you know, could be helpful. Just as someone to call in to say, hi, how are you doing? That could be one way of doing it. Or even a national, even, you know, having our government agencies take care of some of the elderly, for example. They do regular check-ins in terms of calls as well. So calling might be helpful. Or even you, right? If you're staying overseas and you want to be able to do something back home for them, maybe it's just about that check-in, you doing that check-in, and just getting in touch and staying in touch with them at a certain time, you know, so that there's always something that they can look forward to, even though they might feel really anxious. You're able to kind of reassure them that this is still consistent for them. Giving them some form of consistency might help.
Okay, I'm going to go from parents to children. Some people, 2 questions. Some people are very worried that children are spending their entire life now on a screen,
On screens.
Netflix, games. How bad is that? Should people just say, it's a crazy time, you knock yourself out? 8 hours of Netflix a day?
Yeah, I have to say no. Again, you're gonna have, realistically, you want to be able to let go a little of that control because it's you need the time too. There's no hard and fast rule about that. Of course, if we had an option, screen time would be cut short. But because of all the online learning as well, we are unfortunately on our screens quite a bit. I would say if you could, right, if it's an option for some of us, being able to target some games where, it could be board games, right? It could be, card games. It could be things like that where you didn't really have to then be on the screen, but you could still have family time together. I think that would be a nice option. I've seen families go out on like cycling trips or, as well. I know you can do it one-on-one, but doing something like that could also be helpful to get them off the screen. But to be honest, I think you don't want to be too harsh on yourself if in the event that's all you can do right now. Again, hold yourself kindly, right? If that's the best you can do, that's the best you can do. No rules around that.
Another question about children. Exams around the world have been cancelled, summer exams, and someone said, my children are just so disappointed. They worked towards this for years and years, and it's all gone. And I don't know, it's a meaning issue. Their life has been about a goal, and it's just gone. How do we help them?
Well, it's interesting, right? So I know the IB programs IB kind of exams have been cancelled. The A levels have been tweaked. Some of the exams for the master's students as well have been tweaked to an online one. I think you want to understand, or you want to help your kids understand that it's not, well, studying is not just about exams. It should not be. Although it really makes itself out to be sometimes, right? But studying is really for learning, right? It's for about being curious about knowledge. So maybe it's about helping your kids understand that yes, it is disappointing. Yes, when we might not be able to showcase what we've learned over the years, but honestly, it's not a waste. These are some knowledge that you've gained for yourself, and it could be interesting if you could create some form of experiments that might help you apply that knowledge into kind of real life kind of games or real life kind of fun. I think that would make more meaning of the knowledge that we learn rather than just kind of taking exams and scoring for it, if I call it that. Yeah, but it is difficult though. I know. I mean, we're all part of this system as well. So
okay, we've got 2 minutes. I'm going to take 2 questions, and well, okay, it's a relevant question. How do we deal with grief and loss? Some people are losing loved ones.
Oh yeah. So there's in psychology, we know this as stages of grief, right? So you go from a feeling of loss, sadness, and then you go into denial, then you accept it, and then you get angry, and then you're denial again. So I would say just go back to my idea of acing your emotions, right? Just acknowledge it. It's going to be a tough time. We're not going to have the funerals that we know, that we've come to know, right? It could be a very different situation that we're in. But acknowledge that you will feel upset. Acknowledge that you will feel this sense of loss, and maybe remember the person in a different way. Like give them a moment or try to celebrate that person's life in a way that's meaningful for you. I think a shift of that perspective might be helpful as compared to just focusing on the loss or the emptiness that the person's death or passing, or maybe the separation might have brought as well.
I think we're going to have to stop there. I think we should stop there. I'm going to say thank you so much, Dr. Chan.
Thank you.
I would like to remind people to register. People are saying wonderful sharing, so useful tips. Thank you very much. Thank you for the great questions. Please register on the SGN website. We will send out that link later. You can download, I didn't mention this, you can download this presentation if you like from the handouts tab. We will also email it out. I would like to say that there is another webinar. We're going to have another webinar on the 2nd of May. So please log in again for that. And yes, I'd just like to thank the Singapore Global Network, and in particular, Dr. Cherie Chan, for these, really incredible insights. It's been a really educational 60 minutes.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. See you soon, everybody.